Hey, welcome back to the channel and welcome back to the Writer's Bookshelf. So today we have another Writer's Digest compilation. This time our focus is on writing voice. And if you've been keeping up with this season so far, you know that we've already done one on creating characters. We've done one on dialogue. And these particular books from this style, which again, if you look inside, it's got all the same, you know, the usual stuff, the usual formats, just different logos. This is a collection of essays and chapters from other books on the topic of voice. And this particular book is cool because it's primarily articles from Writer's Digest. So you're not going to get as much overlap in this book that you would from the others when it comes to some of the books that we cover. There is one on, there is an article from Story Engineering in this book, and then another one, I think actually that's the only one I've covered so far that's got a section in here. There's one that I want to cover eventually that I do want to do one called was it Writing with Persistence, Writer's Guide to Persistence. I haven't done that one yet. That was going to be one of my season 3 books, but that has an excerpt in here. And then another book I have on a bookshelf, I'm still not sure if I'm going to cover it or not, called The Irresistible Novel. That one has an excerpt in here. But for the most part, it's Writer's Digest articles, you know, from the last couple decades. And what the topic of voice is, and I know a lot of times we go into a story not really knowing what that even means, but what they often will advocate, like in the writer's circle, in the publishing circle in particular, with agents and traditional publishers, excuse me, is that they want to find your voice, or they want you to be able to explain or to tell your story with your particular voice. And a lot of times writers don't even know what that means because no one can adequately explain what that means. And if you're in that camp where you've heard that phrase and you have no idea what they're talking about, then you're not alone. That's a lot of times it's a hard thing to explain because it's something you can't teach. It's like one of the only writer toolbox things that you can't actually learn from other people. That's a very odd thing. So like, how in the world did you get an entire book out of that? Well, that's sort of the big challenge here, is what the book is emphasizing throughout all of the different essays and chapters that covers, is that your voice is what you contribute to the story. It's your way of speaking, your outlook. So voice is actually a number of things. It's not just like me talking to you. It'd be my presentation. So for example, in 2 episodes ago for Mastering Plot Twists, which I still have at my desk because I'm doing these at once, I talked about how I went through this whole series of titles that we've done so far, and then I give you a little bit of a twist. By if you remember the episode, I didn't actually say that we're going to do plot twists today. I said we're going to learn how to have other authors write our books for us, and so that was an unexpected twist. But that was my way of bringing that up. And some other author or some other YouTuber, might have had a different approach altogether. They may have just gone right to the book. It's like, well, today, we're going to talk about plot twist, and it's going to be fun, and I bet you didn't expect that. It's like, well, yeah, I did. It's on the title card. I didn't think the twist would be if we did writing voice today. But my presentation is my voice. It's my way of delivering the information. And that's something you cannot teach other people, and you can't learn from other people because that is uniquely you. And so one of the things that this book does is it tries to empower your voice. It tries to empower your right to speak your way through developing your stories in the way that only you can tell. Which is why you have, in particular, the nonfiction section, which is like the last section of the book. They have memoirs and things like that, or even like instructionals. There's a certain reason why some books do better than others, even though they cover the same topics. It's because the writer has a particular way of delivery that is not only unique to them but appealing to readers. And if you can fine-tune what your voice is, or if you can figure out what your voice is and own up to it, that's part of the appeal of reaching out to your readers. They look for you. So an example for me, one of my favorite authors, his name is Max Berry, and I got a few of his books, Stir Up Jennifer Government, Company, and a few others. And the thing with Max Berry in particular is like the first 3 books were all like corporate satires. I loved all 3 of them. I thought they were all amazing. In fact, I found Company was the first one I found because the front cover had a donut on it, and actually I have it. Sorry, pause the video here. You have Company, which has got a donut on it, And then I thought, well, that was really interesting. Wonder what else he has. And so I thought, well, let me look it up. And of course, he had a book called Jennifer Government, which I bought that same night. I have that. I'm not going to grab it. It's over there. You can look it up on Amazon to see. It's basically an eye with a scan code underneath it. But then I kept looking, and I saw reviews for this book called Syrup, which was not in the store at the time. But I looked it up, and I thought, you know what? That's a really cool cover, right? So I was attracted, to these books by the cover. But then I actually opened it up and saw what was inside. I just thought it was hilarious because his voice was so like sarcastic but hilarious. It's kind of like one of those things where the situation is absurd but believable, and then, like, I felt like, well, that's kind of like how I like to write, or at least how I like to have my stories told. And it takes these it has a really good way of twisting and turning the story, but it's just the appeal of the characters. I thought the characters were slick but fun. And again, believable for their culture. And Syrup, they're marketers, and so everything about the book is marketing satire, and it's like pitch perfect all throughout the story. And when he gets to Company, which is the third book in his bibliography, he the whole story is about this office of all these misfits who they don't realize that they're being experimented on. And it's just the way that they all kind of come to the realization that this whole thing is not real. It's all a very interesting development of story points. But if, let's say, Stephen King wrote Syrup, or Stephen Pressfield wrote Company, Stephen King might put that a little bit of that fear into the marketing space, and then Stephen Pressfield might have more of a historical slant on a book about people being observed. It'd be a completely different storyline, and certainly a different way of presenting. But Max Berry, he's a funny writer, and so his entire storyline is funny. And then so when he gets to his fourth book called Machine Man, I had to get the book and actually Machine Man was one that he was originally started submitting chapters to his readers, to the people on his mailing list, as sort of like an experiment to see whether or not he was going in the right direction. So it was a way to get the readers involved as he was producing the book. Eventually, he kind of finished it, the first job, cleaned it up, made it a more full-length novel, because the original, I think it was originally sampled at a few chapters for free, and then I think he paid a few bucks to get the rest of it. And then when it came time to publish it, he had to go through the entire editing process and make it a full-fledged novel. But even with that, it was a sci-fi, kind of in the vein of RoboCop, where the guy just gradually changes from man to machine. But the opening chapter, I don't want to give it too much away, but the opening chapter is one of the funniest chapters I think I've read in any book at all. And this is a total sci-fi, RoboCop, Iron Man, very kind of in your face, metal on metal action story, but sci-fi. But that opening scene had some of the most absolutely believable but ridiculous stuff that you just could not help but have have your gut bust. The other way. It's one of those things where, like, I think I probably laughed for 5 minutes straight at the end of that chapter. Now the other chapters that follow, they kind of leveled out a little bit. That opening chapter was very much a Max Berry chapter, and that's my point. Is your author when whenever you read a book from an author you like, you expect each book to be similar in some form or another, even if the plots aren't the same. Again, Max Berry went from there to more science fiction based, and the book he put out last year it was based on an intelligent, hyper intelligent spaceship who's trying to fight this war against this alien species. And those of you who aren't sci-fi readers, I'm not a big one either. I still thought it was a great book. So I think my third favorite in his collection. So the fact that he can take a genre I'm not even a big fan of, and make it both fun and worth reading, and something that I really truly enjoyed enough to where, like, if I had other writers like that in that genre, I'd probably read that genre more often. And only it takes the voice to do that. Without that writer's voice, that particular writer's voice, I wouldn't have been as into the book. I mean, now as a movie, I would enjoy, because I do like those kinds of movies. But to read about them, it's too much science. I don't like it. But he has the right mix of that movie quality in the voice that I'm used to reading in these books and putting it all together, and it just made for a really compelling story. That one it was called Providence, is the name of that book. And then anyway, this is not about Max Berry. It's about writing your voice, but just to refresh your memory, this is what we're actually talking about here. But the point being is that every author you read has a reason why you keep going back for their works. And so part of the skill, so this whole season is about craft. Part of the skill of having your work mean something is to figure out what your voice actually is, and that means like what your attitudes are, what your beliefs are, what your way of your outlook of the world. If you're the kind of person who's optimistic, then your writing may reflect that. Although, in fairness, that's if you're a nonfiction writer. If you're a fiction writer, then your voice is going to come through the lens of your protagonist, right? Because you're not actually using your point of view, you're using your protagonist's point of view, and that's something else that they get into throughout the book. And there's so many things also too, even with how you craft your sentences, how where you punctuate, things like that. There's even one of my favorite sections, which I didn't think would be my favorite section at all, is there's an entire lesson on when to use active and when to use passive voice. And I'm not going to look for it here, but if you're ever like wondering like when should I use active, or even points of view, like when should you use the first person, second person, third person. Second person usually don't ever want to do that, but they do give examples of all the different types of persons that are even within the third person market. Is it third person omniscient, third person limited? Is it first person immediate? I think is what there's all these different types of perspectives that even that's covered in this book. So if you're not sure what your story should be, this is a book worth looking at. They actually have there's a chart in here I thought was pretty interesting. And it asks you pointed questions that helps you decide which voice you should be writing in. I just had it in front of me. Let's see if I can find it again real quick without making this video boring all of a sudden. I literally just passed it, and then I didn't think I'd show it, but yeah, here we are. Now I want to show it to you. See, that's how it works when you do on-the-fly video recording. You have all these lofty ideas that you think about after you've passed that point. Okay, I have no idea where it is now. Anyway, it's what it is I'm looking for. It's essentially it's a chart where it asks you pointed questions, and then you decide what voice you need from that questions and answer. It's literally like right in here. Come on, you're here somewhere. Where are you, man? Wow, it's like I literally passed it now. I can't do it. All right, I'm sorry. I'm probably boring you now, so we'll just skip it. Anyway, you can get the book and see what I'm talking about. But yeah, essentially it's kind of like one of those tournament charts where you have like it's like forks in the road. You pick this, then this leads to a branch, and the branch. So that's just one example. But there's so many different things in this book that will allow you to identify how you should approach your text. And again, it's not something that they're not going to teach you how to do it because there's nothing to learn. It's about identifying what your style is and how best to present that to readers, and being comfortable with your own voice, and having confidence that only you can write your way. But anyway, so just so we know what else is in here, there are 5 parts. So like all these Writer's Digest collections, they are divided by parts, and each one's got their own little sections. So your first one is defining what voice is, called What is Voice? And some examples are writing for readers, tapping your unique voice, awaken your authenticity, a singular voice, and all about that voice. Then you have creating voices part 2, and that's when you find your voice, create your own voice, voice of your own. A little bit of overlap in some of these sections, but nevertheless, what is my take on overlap? The more you repeat something, the more likely you're to remember it. Voice of your own, self-expression, your personal style. And then you have part 3 is the mechanics of voice. Here, this is where you actually learn how to style your text in a way that comes across accurately. So you have qualities of words, prefer the active voice, that's the one. where they have active versus passive, voice and style, taking chances with style, make your tone pitch perfect, and so on. Okay, and then the other parts, part 4, fiction specific voice, and then part 5 is nonfiction. And part 5 in particular is interesting, regardless of what your background is, because I find that part 5 in particular, the nonfiction voice, is relevant to all writers of any stripe, whether you're writing for publication or for your college essay. Learning how to do the nonfiction voice is essentially another way of saying learning how to speak. You know, learning how to put your personality into everything you write, even if it's a letter to grandma. So, and they talk about too, one of the articles talks about how Diablo Cody, who wrote Juno, her breakout novel was a book called Candy Girl, and apparently the whole reason why the agent picked it up is not because of the topic at all. It had nothing to do with, because I guess that particular topic has been, you know, been around the block and back, and you know, why would anybody need another book about that topic? Diablo Cody got the sale because her voice, and if you've ever seen any movie or any writing about Diablo Cody, you know she's got a very unique voice that no one can or should duplicate. Her voice just stood out like that. Like within that first paragraph, the agent was hooked, had to read more. And that's the power of voice, is when you can get your reader or your representative, whoever it is you're trying to hook into your writing, if you can get them by the sound of your voice. Not to say you shouldn't have something to say, because that's the other point that a lot of these articles are making, is that you still need a story. You can't just wax eloquent about your cup of coffee and expect your reader to stay with it for more than a few sentences. If you're not moving the plot forward, if you're not moving the character forward, if you're not doing something that's important to the story or relevant to your theme. One of them gives the example of how you don't want to be the person who's showing the pictures of the Grand Canyon when no one cares. You want to still stick to the part that people are there for. But if you can hook them with a voice that's compelling, interesting. If you've seen Independence Day, Bill Pullman's speech, as the president, is regarded one of the finest cinematic speeches in movie history. For a cheesy movie, I mean, Independence Day is no Oscar winner, right? It's a movie about aliens and rah-rah American spirit, and 4th of July becoming the day that the world became independent from alien attacks and all that, and just a really kind of popcorn fest of a movie, not at all compelling for drama, or although there's some dramatic moments. So let's be honest, I'm sure I cried a few times watching that movie, but there's still it's a fun movie, not a powerful movie. But that speech that Bill Pullman gives right before they have the attack on the last day was such a juggernaut of a speech. Not even our real life politicians could ever hope to match that, except maybe JFK, right, or Lincoln. And even then, I'm sure that the speech was in part ripped from their own personas. It's not the kind of thing you'd expect in a movie like that. But why is that speech so memorable? Because the way he delivers it, it's a very patriotic, but yet it's universal. And any other wording, any other way of delivering the fact that, hey, we should be free from aliens, let's fight them. No, that's not inspiring. The inspiration comes with your delivery. The inspiration comes with stirring up that emotion. Getting your Randy Quaid to go, yeah, you want that emotion stirred, and the voice paired with the words really helps in doing that. So if you're not comfortable with voice, if you're not sure what your voice is, I do recommend writing voice. Again, this is Writer's Digest. Came out in 2017. It's got the same components that the other two have. You've got, again, the collection of essays from the Writer's Digest magazine, chapters from other books. Not as many as the others have, but it's still it's sufficiently curated. And then you have your permissions at the end. It shows you where everything came from. If you want to explore those books more, you can. But it's one of the, I think, in my opinion, the best compilation of articles on the topic of voice. I really think that if you have no clue what they mean when they talk about voice, you need this book. Read through it. It's less than 300 pages, barely, but each one, it's worth it. And it sounds like it would overlap a lot. There's components overlap, like they all talk about what am I trying to say? There's a couple things in here that they do overlap, like the points of view. Like, don't use the second person. You can help it. Like, that shows up in more than one place. You know, there's things that you will find that they have slight overlap, but it's not nearly as overlapped as like our last couple of topics in this series, because it's just not a lot of ways to overlap it. It's such a unique topic. It's such a hard one to really quantify without practicing it. And that's the other thing too, is this is one of the few that actually gives you exercises and challenges to practice. Not every article or page does that. Some of them are short too, but if you ever needed to find a way to establish that that voice, they do challenge you. And this goes back to an article I wrote for my blog a few months ago called the Advantages of Free Writing. And if you go to zippywings.wordpress.com, look that up. Again, it's I just said it. The Advantages of Free Writing. It has a component in that topic of exploration. Like, I'm not a fan of free writing because I think it's a waste of time. But if you are struggling with a particular skill in your writing, then you want to develop the muscle memory toward that skill. And the reason, or the focus I had on that article was on showing emotion with characters and showing my weakness as a writer, and how I would use free writing as a way to power through my weakness, so that when I come to my actual writing, I'm not hampered by the weakness. I can actually, lay out the skill that I've been practicing onto the actual thing that matters and not lose a step. Well, they do have sections in this book where they kind of, qualify the same idea with voice, where they give you challenges where you can, let's say, imagine Humpty Dumpty, the nursery rhyme Humpty Dumpty, and imagine if William Faulkner had written it. Imagine if Stephen King had written it. Imagine if I don't think he was on there. If Herman Melville wrote it, if Edgar Allan Poe had written it, like, how would that look? And so they give you a challenge to recreate these little ideas or passages using the voices of these authors. Not that that's easy. I mean, can you really write Edgar Allan Poe, and Melville and Faulkner and Stephen King, and Lee Child? Not that Lee Child was mentioned, but can you use all these authors? Can you emulate them well enough? I mean, no, because you're not them. They have their own voice, but the challenge is, for you to identify how to tell the difference between voice and presentation, all that. They give you these practices of something that you're familiar with and turning it on your head, or in this case, Humpty Dumpty's head, so that you can see how voice shapes the trajectory of the story. And this goes back to what I was saying about Max Berry's books. Stephen King's take on syrup would be much different than his. So those are things to keep in mind. But anyway, again, that's Writing Voice. It's from the editors of Writer's Digest books. There's one more book in this series that I know of, but I don't own it. That's on novels and short stories. Not sure if or when I'll get to that one. It won't be this season. But if you do want the complete set, that's the other one that follows this path. So if you like those types of collection books, that's another one to look up when you get a chance. But yeah, make sure you give us, you let us know how your process is. If you want feedback, if you want some people in the community to give you feedback on your voice, write a little passage in the comments and see how your voice sounds, and we can let you know if we're compelled. Whatever you want to do, it's fine. But anyway, other than that, make sure you subscribe, do all the things YouTubers tell you to do. Again, comment below on anything you want to discuss about this video or about other books you want to see in the future. If you're an author who has a book on writing that you would like me to cover, or you feel like my viewers should know about, do send me a message at some point and let me know. Do bear in mind, I do have a long list of books I want to cover ahead of the game, so it'll be a while before I get to new titles that are not already on my queue. But at some point I'm going to be run out of titles, so at that point I would like to know something that is worth covering. So if you have one you want me to look at, by all means let me know, and I'll get to it when I can. And then the other thing is, if you like this channel, if you like this series, if you like anything else I do here, you can support me by checking out my books. You go to jeremybursey.com to see my library. Hopefully it's open by now, and if not, it'll be open soon, and if not soon, soon anyway, whatever it is in relative of that. You can certainly bookmark the page, and at some point it will open, and you can check it out. But you can always go to Amazon, boost the algorithm a little bit, help me out. That way, if you like this, if you want to see more content, because everything that you pick up helps me keep the channel alive and helps me put more time into the content. But then also getting it off of these certain sites boosts the exposure for other readers so that they too can support. So just something to keep in mind. And also, if you want to help me or any of these authors that I cover, like Writing Your Voice or even Max Berry, all authors like reviews, because reviews help us in our career, especially the good ones. The more authentic your review, the better. Like, just stars alone aren't always enough. But if you have something to say that other readers can benefit from, and we too, if there's something you want to tell us what we did right or tell us what we did wrong, that's also helpful too. So bear that in mind if you're a reader or if you're somebody who wants to support writers. That always helps. So anyway, that's it for today. I don't want to meander too much on the non-topics, but do check us, or do you come back next week? We'll have a new topic to cover, and then we've got a few more left in this season before we go into the bonuses. So stay tuned for that. But thanks for sticking around, and thanks for watching the series so far, and hope you come back for the next one, and hope you come back for the rest of it. So we'll be here. Thanks again. We'll see you next time. Bye.